Welcome to the Math Ed Podcast. My name is Sam Otten from the University of Missouri, and today I am joined by some colleagues. We are all collaborating together on a project that we're going to be talking about. We're going to share some of the reasons that we've been motivated to do this work and a little bit about how we are thinking about teacher professional development in mathematics. So I've got three guests with me. We're going to start right here with Xandra.
Hi, Xandra Diarajo from the University of Florida's Lastinger Center for Learning.
And also with us is Amber.
Amber Candela, the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
And our trusty postdoctoral fellow, Paul.
Paul Wansavage, University of Florida, Lastinger Center for Learning.
So we are the leadership group of the Practice-Driven Professional Development Project, which is funded by the National Science Foundation. We also have some great graduate students who work with us on the project. But what we wanted to do is get together and just share some of our thoughts that have motivated this project. And we are also going to be talking about the ways that we're thinking about forms of professional development. We're going to be talking about what we've kind of come to realize or notice about transformational professional development efforts. We're also going to talk about some of the things we're trying, which we're calling incremental professional development efforts. But first, Xandra, maybe as PI, you could just let us know what is Practice-Driven PD? Like, what is this project in short?
Sure. So this is a super awesome project we affectionately refer to as PDPD, the Practice-Driven Professional Development Project. And it's basically designing professional development based on the idea of incremental approaches. So we draw heavily on John Starr's article from 2016 in which he proposed kind of creating PD in an incremental way instead of more ambitious or transformative efforts. And so we're taking that to heart and trying to figure out what that actually might look like and how do we do that and if it even matters.
And Amber, Paul, what brought you to this project or how did you get involved?
Well, I would say I was someone who has a pretty deep research background in professional development and thinking about ways to support teachers in the classroom. And with all of the research I've done in that, I realized it didn't seem to be impacting the teachers as much as I wanted it to. And so thinking about this alternative approach, I thought was a very exciting idea, and thinking about how we're basing it more on what the teachers are currently doing in the classroom, and just thinking differently around how are we supporting teachers in the classroom.
And we're super fun to work with. Right?
And yes, of course.
So for me, I finished my PhD in 2021 and was looking for some sort of professor kind of opportunity, but this postdoc opportunity came up and I couldn't pass it up. I mean, I got to work with all three of y'all, so like, what more could I ask for, right?
Amber's alluding to it, Xandra's alluding to it as well. We've all been involved in professional development in one way or another. We've also all been reflecting on what's working, what could work better. We all sort of, I think it's fair to say, we all had a motivation for professional development to make more of an impact. We want to see it sort of spreading. We want to see it being taken up by teachers. And even though a lot of professional development has great ideas involved and people are doing great things, a lot of the professional development projects are doing great things with the teachers that they reach, but it's maybe not reaching as widely as we had hoped. And we're trying to think, if maybe there's this new approach involved.
Yeah, I would say that I think probably all of us in our PhD programs really bought into the idea of reform-oriented teaching, which I think many doctoral students over the years have done so, and also teachers. And Sam and I had a flipped mathematics study that we did previously, and we were watching lots of algebra classrooms, and we're like, surely we'll see some awesome stuff. And it aligned with what we have bought into over the years and we've been trying to support. And we saw a lot of traditional teaching, which is not a bad thing. It's just not what we were hoping for.
It was just more of a reality check of like, oh yeah, this is what math teaching looks like. A lot of it is very conventional, as you might expect. But yeah, that made us think, okay, how can we work in this space? And we wanted to honor teachers. We wanted to meet teachers where they were. We wanted to work from there. So what we want to talk about next here is a post that we've made on our website, practicedrivenpd.com. We've been trying to just put together some of our thoughts about what has brought us to this work. How are we thinking about it? So we're going to go through a few things. First of all, we have a little bit more we want to say about what we were seeing in the professional development field for math ed. But then we're going to try to actually list what are some of the reasons we think transformational PD, like PD that's trying to make those big transformations in instruction, why haven't those taken off? Like, why haven't they made a kind of widespread impact across the field? And then we're going to enumerate a few of our reasons that we are giving a shot to incremental PD. Like, why is it worth trying? So we're going to list those out. But to lead into that, let's keep talking about this, like the motivation. The way I phrased it, this actually came in the middle of the night. I woke up and had this thought that there's really a paradox and a contradiction in professional development in math education. And this was because we'd been talking about it for a long time and trying to wrap our heads around it. The paradox, I think, is that there's great PD happening. There are success stories of great things. This project did amazing things. These teachers are really taking up these transformative ideas. Those success stories, though, have not yielded widespread changes to math instruction, at least in the United States. So for me, that's kind of this, we have success decade after decade. We have people doing great projects on PD, but it hasn't changed the teaching across the country.
And I think some of the reason for that is some of these success stories are taking time and investments, and it's working really closely with one or a few or a group of teachers, and then it's not being moved beyond that. And because of the work going into it, it's not like the teacher can just walk into the classroom next door and say, hey, I did this really awesome year-long intensive PD. Let me work with you over the next year-long intensive PD. And so I do think a lot of it is these success stories are just not finding themselves being replicable after the researchers leave.
I think one of the things is just capacity. Like, as math ed people, we only have a certain amount of capacity, and we can work with those teachers for a certain amount of time, but at some point, like, we just can't, it's not able to scale.
So that seems like a challenge. It's one that a lot of people have talked about, but this is just something we've also thought about. We also have talked about this contradiction or possible contradiction, which to me is that when we talk about educating learners, we talk about really building on the learner's concepts that they bring to the classroom, meeting the learner where they are, and then trying to move with them forward. And yet, a lot of the professional development, we were feeling like the professional development is not really building on the teacher's vision of what they're doing day to day and how they think about teaching, and it's not really acknowledging their constraints. Instead, a lot of the professional development is more like setting a target for them to aim for. Like, here's a form of instruction that's inquiry-based, it has really rich problems, it's connected to cultures, it has discourse, and the professional development is kind of led by that professional developer's vision of where to go. But that might be kind of disconnected from where the teacher is right now and how the teacher is thinking about teaching right now. And so it's, to me, the contradiction is we would want our teachers to build from students' current concepts and then move them forward. And yet the professional developers are often, we thought, coming in with new ideas that might be far removed from where the teacher is currently.
I think that everybody, when they come in and work with teachers, have their own goals and aims. And often it's to improve teaching and ultimately student learning. I think one of the things with this project that we really want to emphasize is that we named it practice-driven, not practice-based. It is based in practice, but practice-driven, because we really want the teacher's current practices to drive where we go next. So it's kind of to your point, Sam, is that we do have endpoints or kind of like ideas of where it may go, but it has to be catered and differentiated for the teachers in light of their current practice. So it's driven by their practice.
Yeah, by their practice and driven by the teacher themselves. Like, they are actually making choices of what they do, rather than the professional developer really saying, this is where I want you to get to, or something like that.
And I also think we talk so much to teachers around presuming competence of kids, and your kids come in with this knowledge and this understanding of mathematics, you should understand where that is and build on it. But then we work with teachers, we sort of change our tone with how we think about teachers. And so really it's also a call for professional developers to presume competence of teachers. And Xandra's often said teachers do things well and they like to do them. And then sometimes we come in and try to say, maybe that's not the thing you should be doing.
It's a different thing to do.
But as a teacher, if I like doing that, I'm not going to want to change that because I enjoy it and it fits in my classroom. And however my classroom flow is going, it's all going well for me.
It's serving some kind of purpose. Like, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't getting me something in return.
Yeah, so we want our project to be driven by the teachers, their practices, and we can try to come in with support, but it's driven by the teacher instead of being driven by us. So I think that's I think a good overarching sort of way to think about it. What we want to do now, and this is on our website, is we want to just lay out 4 reasons that we've identified of why transformational PD, and by that we mean PD that is trying to make a large transformation in the teaching practice. So shifting to a discourse-based way of teaching, shifting to inquiry-based, shifting to culturally connected, like lots of changes that are several steps from conventional practice.
For most teachers. There are some teachers for which that would be an incremental move.
Yeah,
but most teachers, yes, that would probably be pretty transformative.
Right, and this is also another thing too, is we are really trying to think about the majority of teachers and ways to reach them. That will come up in our conversation. So here are 4 reasons that we think have contributed to transformational PD, as great as it is, reasons that it hasn't spread maybe as far as we want it to spread. So number 1 is that transformational PD is often built on a separation, or it separates the teacher's current practice from the vision that the professional developer has. And by coming in with a new vision or a different model of teaching, you've just immediately built that separation. Another reason that it might not have taken off like we would want it to is that transformational PD is only reaching or is only accessed by certain teachers, not all of them, or not the vast majority. In the same way, we thought that transformational PD is only viable in certain contexts, not every context. And then we also think that transformational PD, by being transformational, it's asking for very noticeable changes, and that can sometimes trigger a backlash. And then teachers and others have to deal with that backlash, and sometimes that can go in difficult directions, to say the least. So there's a few reasons. There are others, but these were 4 that we have felt kind of clarifying to sort of like try to articulate. What is everyone's thoughts on those 4 reasons?
So I agree, obviously, we co-authored this blog post, but I think that there is a separation often between developers and teachers in that we come in and we're really excited to share research-based practices with teachers around discourse or high cognitive demand tasks, these things that we really feel strongly that are beneficial to students. And the teachers are trying to just get through more content ahead of a test, say, or engage their students, but with the curricula they have existing because they don't have a lot of time. And so I think it does become a separation between those 2 groups in that the developers do want to do all these things, but the teachers have some more pressing or top of the mind goals that maybe they really want to work on, and they're not always able to see how these 2 things might work together.
Then there becomes this process of seeking out teachers or school districts that buy in to the professional development goals. And I think we've all been part of that, of trying to find the people that buy in, that want to work on this together. But sometimes that's only certain teachers that buy into it or that are interested in it, or only school districts that are willing to sign on for that sort of project. It's not designed to reach the masses of just any teacher kind of anywhere in regular school districts here or there.
Well, it's hard when there's a culture in a certain school of like, this is how we do it. And then if you're trying to come in and do something that's totally different than is there's not a lot of support. So I felt the pressure when I was in the classroom of like, I would want to do something, but it just did not mesh well with the existing culture of how things were done.
And I think that a reason there's separation and a reason it was only reaching certain teachers and contexts is because we understand there's constraints of teachers, but it's almost like we ignore them when we try to come in with transformational PD because we are asking them to do things that take a lot of time, that take a lot of resources. And that's sometimes what triggers the backlash. I have to use this curriculum. I have this much time in my day. And so really thinking about what is it that we're asking teachers to do, and are we asking them to do too much and we're setting them up for this failure already from the beginning? And then if they feel as though they can't do it, they're immediately going to say, I'm out, I'm done, this is not for me, thank you so much, no thank you.
I think all these things are challenging. Like transformational professional development is by its nature like meant to transform practice. And if you think about a conventional classroom, and many of the classrooms I've visited look like the classrooms I experienced as a student, the gap between what is currently taking place for a number of good reasons and reasonable reasons, and I would probably also take a lot of these aspects myself if I were back in the classroom, they're good, but the gap between that and what kind of this vision of reform-oriented, student-centered, inquiry-based instruction is pretty great in a lot of contexts in terms of like resource gaps, time gaps, support gaps, all of these things. And so it makes sense why it hasn't really taken root at scale.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, because of something I said earlier too, we're in support of all these things that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Like we're in support of discourse, we're in support of inquiry, we're in support of cultural connections, we're in support of like all of these things that are the goals of Transformation PD, we are also rooting for and cheering for and would love to see. But we just think that asking teachers or coming with a professional development project and saying, we're going to make this really big change, it's going to be a life-changing sort of event, that's difficult. That's difficult to pull off. And for, like Xandra's saying, like with a lot of reasonable constraints, it's going to be difficult to pull off. And so for us, it's kind of just more of a reality check of like, is it working? Like, you know, these goals are good. the ideas are great, but is it actually taking off? Is it actually spreading amongst teachers and sort of taking on a life of its own? We're worried that it's not really taking off and has not really taken hold.
But we don't want people to stop. We want people to continue rooting and trying transformational PD. Having these existence cases and these pockets where it does take root is very valuable for the field. It shows people that it can happen and things can get different. And we also need people who are doing little day-to-day changes that will cumulatively, hopefully one day, create the conditions for change at scale that's more reform across the country instead of the pockets.
Yeah, especially for the majority of teachers, not just the teachers who are going to the conferences or signing up for the university projects or reading all the books or the teachers that don't have a PLC with the support. We want to have some PD that reaches the masses, so to speak.
Yes.
What we are trying to say is incremental PD is a complementary approach to professional development with teachers.
And we have a few more reasons that we've tried to articulate, and it's available on our website, about why we think it's worth trying. We're alluding to some of it, but we tried to enumerate them. There's 6 reasons we want to share here that we think it's worth some of us giving a shot to this incremental approach. One is we think an incremental approach, by being driven by practice and by meeting teachers right where they are, it can just remove that gap between the developer's vision of some transformation and actual practice. We can remove that gap by actually just totally basing and driving the PD from the reality of practice and the reality of constraints. We also think, number 2, that incremental PD can be affirming to the teacher. It can come in and it can say, I see what you're doing, that's great, you have good reasons for doing that, I want to work with you, but we might have some suggestions, but they're kind of offered in good faith of like, hey, we're working together, here are some suggestions that you can kind of take or leave. We also think that this could help with teacher confidence, rather than sort of having the teacher judge themselves against the new transformed vision. We're just actually working with them from where they are and trying to build confidence and build positively forward. Number 3, we think that the incremental PD could provide a variety of suggestions to the teachers, and they have the power of choice. It gets to what Xandra was saying about being driven by practice and being driven by the teacher themselves, is that they can choose the suggestions that they want to take up and that they think are worth trying, instead of the professional developer kind of having the agenda of what you're going to work on. We think incremental PD has a higher likelihood of spreading. We can talk more about that, but we think being small, being modest, being tied to conventional sorts of teaching practices, we think means you could actually take it to the teacher next door. You could actually share it, and other people could be like, oh, I can take that up pretty easily. And number 5 is very much related to number 4. Number 5 is that this kind of PD can spread to the majority of teachers, not just the ones who are already plugged into the professional organizations, to the books, to the other intensive kinds of projects. And then number 6, hearkening back to what we said before about transformations can trigger backlash. And by the way, that backlash can also be sometimes the community giving a hard time to the teacher for doing something innovative, or other teachers not being comfortable with it, or a variety of backlash can happen.
Just see the Common Core social media posts.
Just look at social media around math instruction for anybody trying to do anything that's not recognizable by parents and community and TV commentators even. But incremental PD, it kind of slips in there along with conventional instruction, and it makes some enhancements or it offers some suggestions, but hopefully it's stealthy enough and subtle enough that it doesn't trigger a intense backlash that lands on the teacher's desk. Those are a few reasons. What thoughts do you all have, since these have kind of come from our group?
You're trying modest suggestions. These are kind of like what we do with students, right? We say build on assets, take a strength-based approach, understand who you're working with so you can build on those strengths, and give them some autonomy and authority over their own learning. And we're kind of taking that, what does that look like to teachers who are learning? And so I think this makes a lot of good sense. What are the immediate things that I might try right away? And I think a lot of people have a tendency to kind of bash the notion of make and take kind of sessions at conferences where teachers get something and they can do it right away because it's a one-shot deal. But I think there is a need and a benefit to that as well. And what if we take that seriously and say, what are those sit and take kind of ideas that can be implemented right away that will get them further with where they want to go?
And as a teacher, anytime I tried something new, if I ever failed at it, I was not doing it again. right? And so often we ask teachers to do things that are so far removed from how they do it, and all of a sudden they've never put their kids in groups before and they try group work and it doesn't work. And they say, no, I'm not going to do this again. It didn't work. Where our suggestions fit into what they are doing, they're just smaller in grain size, so the teacher can have success with it and be able to say, oh, that worked really well. I'm going to keep going with this and keep it as a part of my practice. And hey, I had such success, I might tell the teacher next door, you should try this too.
I think one of the things that I really like about this project is we recognize that teachers are doing good things already, and we're not saying stop doing those things. We're saying keep doing them. And if you're interested, here's a tiny suggestion or something modest enough that if you think it would help improve your instruction, try it out. And if you don't, here's something else. But I really like that we're saying teachers are doing great things, and let's build from what they're doing.
Yeah. And then it is very much, in our project, it's very much a take it or leave it. So we're also just like, you might not like any of these suggestions, and that's cool. We're trusting your professional judgment on it. But here are some suggestions, and if a teacher, and we're hearing from the teachers, they like some of the suggestions. And they're like, oh yeah, I can do that tomorrow. That sounds great. And then they're telling us, it's going well. But it's really putting the ball in their court where they can sort of be like, I think I want to try that. I think it will go well. Hey, it did go well. And now we can kind of try to get some momentum.
And the teachers like that they could do it on their own time, and they get to be the ones that select the instructional nudges that they want to put into their own practice.
And I just want to put a disclaimer out that we're not saying that content knowledge isn't important, pedagogical knowledge isn't important. Those could hypercharge or accelerate enhancements to your learning, but that there are also small things that you can do, whoever you are, to kind of make math education a bit better for your students today, right now.
And our suggestions are based in research.
Absolutely.
We have come up with these ideas and we've just scaled them down.
Made them very small.
We've made them small so that we can say, we know this would be good for your kids if you did this. Here is a scale that is smaller for you to be able to try, and they get to select which ones they tried. But all of the suggestions come from a place of knowing that that would be good for student engagement or conceptual understanding.
And I would build on that. During our baseline year, we watched what teachers did across a lot of observations, and we identified some of these practices that they do regularly and said, okay, this teacher already does that. Here's a nudge around this idea. And what we saw was a lot of these teachers are doing some of the same things across many classrooms. So it's not just individualized to one teacher. It's kind of a broad stroke that says, like, a lot of people are doing this, and so here's a suggestion for that.
Yeah, a lot of people are having warm-ups. A lot of people are having student work time. A lot of times it's individual. Every once in a while it's group work. A lot of people are giving notes, using work examples. Like, yeah, we're identifying things like, wow, a lot of teachers are doing this. Let's compile some suggestions, but then let's put it to the teachers. And the teachers, again, are the drivers. Like, the teachers are the ones that are saying, yes, I do want to try that.
And we're saying, like, if people don't take up the suggestions, then maybe it's not a great suggestion for any number of reasons. So there might be some really great ideas, and we've built some of these instructional nudges that we're like, this is awesome, this would be great, and they're not getting taken up by the teachers. So we see that as it's not meeting a need, it's not the right suggestion. So let's go back and think of the
we need
to change, not the teachers. Like, it's something about what we did or the size or the focus or something that needs to be updated. And I'll just give a plug to look at the website at some point when our nudges are up so that you can see the format, because we spent we spent a long time looking at the format of how we share our information, because that's important as well.
Yeah, what's the right grain size to share with teachers? What's the idea? It's a lot harder than you think it is to try to package something into a one-page kind of condensed version. So
yeah, but we are trying to get that spread. We're trying to make it easy to take up, easy to share, like Amber was talking about. I also am finding myself, and I think our whole team has done this, where we've had to fight against our instincts, because our instincts were honed during transformational PD kinds of experiences. I think all of us, right?
Yes.
So we've had to fight against those a little bit. So one is we have a good idea, but it's fairly large. It's sort of like that takes a lot of skill and a lot of development and stuff to pull that off. I mean, some teachers, it might be the right nudge for certain teachers. But again, for like the majority of teachers, it might be that's a lot to ask of them. Can we get it smaller? Can we get it something that they can do? And we want to have a high likelihood of confidence and success. Another thing that I've had to fight against, I think we've all had to fight against, is that we imagine, like, well, what if we could do a few sessions to train them how to do this nudge? Like, so if we have a nudge about ask this kind of question or put this problem on your worksheet. We think it's kind of small, but then we almost have an instinct of like, let me train them on how to pick the question and how to implement it and how to get the student discussion. And we have to fight against like, no, we're not here to train them over weeks or over months. That would be a big ask. That would be a lot of time and investment and energy. So how can we have a suggestion where we're okay to just turn it over to the teachers and trust the teachers? They will implement it in the way that they think works, and we can trust them to do that. And they actually might know better than us. If we tried to train them on our brilliant idea, actually we might be leading them astray. We might just be causing some teachers to kind of get turned off. Instead, it's like, nope, keep it small, and don't plan on training them for weeks and weeks or months and months about how to do it, quote unquote, correctly. Instead, be like, no, if it's a good suggestion, they can take it, they can run with it, they can do cool things that we might not have even thought of with it.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm thinking about my own health journey, maybe. It's like an additive approach. So we're not saying stop eating pizza, which is what we just had for lunch. What we're saying is like, you can eat whatever you want, just why not drink more water or like a cup of water and leave everything else. Is that moving you towards your goals, that kind of thing? So it's like a small addition, but we're not saying you have to replace all these things or change all these things. It's like an additive asset-based approach, which I think maybe will have better uptake, we're hoping at least, because you can still do the things that you enjoy.
And it seems like it could spread because you can now just encourage others to add, and you're not trying to change other people either. Like if the PD is trying to change the teacher, how can you really expect the teacher to then change other people? That's pretty hard. So instead it's more like, no, we're going to add, we're going to try to be a partner, offering suggestions, you can take them up. And this additive approach is also like, and now you can add it and spread it to other people. And feels a little bit more likely to have success. We're trying to study whether that actually happens, but this is what's kind of driving us.
And we got to assume that the things that get taken up and do spread are things that are beneficial for some reason, and teachers are professionals, and they probably have a good reason why they get taken up or not. So we have to trust them a bit.
And we all are passionate about what we believe in. And I think people have gone into math education because you really want to think about impacting students' love, joy, feelings, learning of mathematics. And I think what's been extremely humbling is we all have our affectionately favorite nudges. And when the teachers critique them and they're like, no, I didn't try this because, and you're like, yep, I get it. Okay. And you start listening and you start reflecting on what you're asking teachers to do. And then you have some that you're like, sure, we do believe in everything that we're doing. And then all of a sudden it's a teacher's favorite nudge. And you're like, yep, got it. And that's what you needed in that moment, in that time. And I just think that what we're doing is giving teachers this large menu to choose from across the time that they're teaching. And they pick up and put down things as they need them. And you're just learning so much from the teachers as they go through this. And you're learning as a researcher and a professional developer yourself and being like, it's not about me, it's about them. And that's sometimes very hard.
Yeah.
But really, it gets that reflection going again. And then it starts to generate, oh, maybe now we can do this. Maybe now we can do this. It's not like we think that our current nudge set will ever and for always be the nudge set, but it starts to spark other conversations. And I think that's amazing.
Along that line, I think it's worth noting that you can put, regardless of the curriculum you're using, the materials that you are kind of constrained by or whatever it is, these kind of fit within any of the like constraints that you might have. So very quick, very easy to implement, very easy to digest. And some teachers have found some success with it, I think.
Yeah, and that small, modest but helpful kind of suggestions, it can slip in a variety of contexts. And also that small, modest part of it is, I think, why it can avoid the backlash. It can just make the teacher feel good about it. It feels like they're enhancing what they're already doing, but it's not going to set them up for a big battle with their colleagues to, why are you teaching that way? And it's like, no, these kind of slip in a lot of contexts and hopefully in a way that just everybody feels pretty good about it. And then it can keep going from there. So we could talk and have talked for a long time about these ideas. Let's check in on where our project is and where is our project heading next. And maybe we'll go back to our principal investigator, Xandra, to talk about that.
Yeah, so we are rounding the corner on the big data collection year. So this coming year, we have about 40-something teachers that are going to get access to our instructional nudges, and we'll see which ones they take up and which ones they don't and what it looks like when they take them up. So this will be a great year, and we'll learn a lot this year. After this year, we are going to release them widely. So keep an eye out on our website to make sure that you look for the nudges, because our goal is to spread them freely and widely, nationally, internationally. So we would love anybody and everybody to try them out.
And just a big thank you to all of our teacher participants right now who are giving us their time and their knowledge and their passion and just being awesome participants in our study.
Yeah, I would add that this project has taken a whole team of effort, and it's not just us. So we have a lot of great grad students at the University of Missouri that have been just phenomenal with helping us get data collected, analyzing the data, and just making the project a success.
And creating the nudges. Yeah, lots of fun conversations about nudges.
Shouting out to Courtney, Michelle, Maria, Faustina, who've been with us through this time.
And keep an eye out for us at upcoming conferences, because we are going to bring printouts of nudges. So look for the purple handouts we'll have with us.
Make and take.
Make and take.
And we would love to engage in a conversation with you on how you feel about what we're doing.
And all the ways we're wrong. You can give us a list, give us a numbered list of everything we got wrong.
Listicle, yeah.
All right. Well, I always like to end on a fun question. So we've been working together for several years. We get together for writing retreats. We have project meetings. We do all this stuff. After we're done working, we also go to activities and have a good time. One of our favorite things to do is trivia.
Yes.
So we have a mixed record, but we always enjoy ourselves. My question is, what would be your preferred trivia topic or category if you got to pick your strongest trivia category?
Amber, you go first.
Such a jerk move.
90s grunge rock. I would crush it. Like, play me a snippet of a song and I will tell you who it is and what the name of the song is. If it's 90s grunge.
Smashing Pumpkins.
Absolutely, you know it.
If I had to pick one thing, it would be C-list actors, actresses. People always go like, how do you know that guy's name? Or how do you know that person's name? And it's like, it's just my talent.
I think you could do C and D list.
Okay. Probably C Andy.
I'd be pretty fantastic at a visual round of animals, identifying animals across the world.
You would be really good at that.
So that would be, I'm a visual round fan.
I think mine, I was going to say DC superheroes, but I actually think a better one for me might be presidential elections.
Oh.
Because when I was in college, I tried to memorize not just all the presidents, but all of the losers, like all the runner-ups.
1980, go!
No, 80 is not too bad. That's Reagan against Carter, and Carter ousted after one term.
Wow.
But I should have known Xander would just try to nobody else started throwing questions in your category.
I don't have a visual of an okapi or whatever.
How many types of rhinoceroses are there?
5.
Rhinoceroses, that would be your category.
I want a mascot.
Well, overall, it's been great working with you and interacting in lots of different ways, and we are working on a mascot that I'm sure we will unveil, right, Amber?
Absolutely. An animal.
A purple rhinoceros.
But that would be amazing!
With the horns.
With
that are
his
just
horn
slightly-
steps.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, there it is.
Bing, bing,
folks.
bing, bing,
There
bing.
it is.
Thanks for listening to our conversation about incremental PD. If you have some of your own ideas to share, and especially if you have some data from PD with math teachers at any level, we invite you to submit an article to our forthcoming special issue on incremental and innovative PD for math teachers. The co-editors of the special issue are myself, Xandra, and Amber, and we want to gather work from more people who are noticing the lack of widespread impact coming from transformational PD, and who are wanting to try a different approach, like incremental PD, or maybe some other innovation in the PD space. You still have about 3 months to prepare your article. The due date is August 31st, 2024, and the special issue is running through the journal Education Sciences. I'll put a link to the special issue call in the show notes, but you can also find it by searching Education Sciences, Special Issue, Incremental PD. A good thing about Education Sciences is that their articles are posted open access. But if you're looking at the submission details, you may notice that there's a mention of an open access fee charged to authors. If you have institutional or grant funding to cover those open access fees, then that's great. But even if you don't have the money, please do not be deterred from submitting to the special issue. If your article is accepted and you need some help covering that fee, we will find the funding for you. We don't want those fees to be a barrier for any good work being shared as part of the special issue. Again, that's the end of August for submissions to the special issue on incremental PD for math teachers in the journal Education Sciences.
You've been listening to the Math Ed Podcast, hosted by Sam Otten.
PracticeDrivenPD.com